Right, well, that was very weird. I just got done watching the UFC 266 press conference, and it was one of the least entertaining press conferences I've ever seen in my entire life. However, there were some interesting moments that I do want to talk to you guys about and give my opinion on, because they had Alexander Volkanovski on stage, Brian Ortega on stage, Lauren Murphy, Valentina Shevchenko, Nick Diaz, and Robbie Lawler as well. But there was just no massive moments. I guess you can't have Marvin Vettori at every single press conference, but maybe we should just have Marvin Vettori under one of the desks, just in case it goes as dull and boring as that press conference just was, and then we can just bring out Marvin Vettori to make everything interesting again, because that felt like an absolute funeral. It was so low energy. The answers that they were given were very, very pathetic, and all of a sudden, Mr. No Personality Alexander Volkanovski steals the show with his personality. I want to talk about multiple people here, but let's start with Nick Diaz. Because I know that Nick Diaz was bad before at press conferences, and he wasn't really a bit of a talky guy, so he doesn't really have that personality side to him. But I know he has a personality, but he just doesn't really have the personality that thrives under a press conference situation where all the bright lights are on him, everyone's asking him questions, and there's a big crowd to please. However, I did notice that Nick Diaz does have a little bit more CTE than maybe we've seen on Nick Diaz before, and I know that some Diaz fans are going to be very unhappy with me saying that. I understand. I know Nick Diaz was never the best at press conferences, but it's very obvious that he seems to be trailing off into other topics in the middle of his sentences. Like, he would answer a question about something and then it would end up just about how hard he's training by the end of it. Like, I think he got asked a question about how he feels to sit back and help out his team in the Nick Diaz army, and he was answering that question, and then he just sort of stopped and looked around a little bit at nothing, and then just returned to talk about how hard he's training and stuff like that. Had a little bit of a stutter as well, and I'll be honest with you guys, I've been worried about Nick Diaz this entire build-up. I'm a huge Nick Diaz fan. I am a huge Nick Diaz fan. I'm just a little bit worried that maybe he doesn't seem 100% switched on, and we'll get to Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega in a moment, and of course, the women said something as well, so I guess we can break that down. But either way, Nick Diaz seems to be saying a lot of lines that don't really make me too confident. If I was picking Nick Diaz here, which I'm not, I'm picking Robbie Lawler by first round TKO, standing TKO. If I was picking Nick Diaz here, I'd be very worried about my prediction right now, because Nick Diaz seems to say a lot of the time, especially in this press conference, a lot of phrases and sentences that make it seem like he's perfectly okay with the idea of Robbie Lawler winning. Like, he's already kind of accepted that there's a solid chance that Robbie Lawler's going to be winning this weekend. Like, it was a very weird situation. He said if he loses this weekend, he's going to want to get right back in there as soon as he possibly can. And I'm all for that, because I'll get the video views and Nick Diaz can come back and he'll fight again and make more money. I don't even mind. But if I was a predictor of Nick Diaz, I'd be very worried about my prediction. Let's talk about Nick Diaz in general, because I know Nick Diaz was a bit weird with his answers, but that's how Nick Diaz is, so you can't really look too much into that. But I do want to say this as well. Why do the media members ask gotcha questions at press conferences? Try and get something entertaining to happen. They're trying to, like, catch Nick out in certain situations. Like, how does it feel? And I don't know how the question was really worded, but the question basically was, at one point in this press conference, how do you feel that Nate Diaz has completely eclipsed you, and now you're living in his fucking shadow, you absolute tramp? And then they just basically spat in his face after that as well. They might as well have, like, honestly. Some of the questions they were asking Nick Diaz were very weird questions, and I think they were aiming to get weird responses out of Nick Diaz and maybe to get Nick Diaz angry, and then there would be a big moment where Nick Diaz got angry and stormed out or something like that. But, like, why are you asking Nick Diaz how it feels that Nate Diaz has eclipsed him and left him in the dust, even though he used to be the general of the army? And he would answer like, yeah, it feels great, yeah, just train real hard, and, yeah. And then that would be it. That would be his response to the question. And it's weird, but it's Nick Diaz. So there's only so much you can look into it, but I will say this. he didn't used to stutter like that. He used to have stuff to say, even if it made no sense, and he would ramble about nothing. He would ramble with some kind of flow. There was a lot of stuttering and looking around. I guess people in the crowd were speaking to him. I think that's what it was. And I think, honestly, at press conferences, there should be some kind of rule to tell those guys to shut the fuck up. It's hard enough to hear the questions up there on the stage anyway. You always hear Dana White asking to say, oh, say that question again. I didn't quite get it. I think people in the crowd need to be a little bit controlled, because they were like spouting some words out in the middle of Nick Diaz's responses, and then he'd get caught up and say, oh, thanks, man, and then get back to his next question. And then they were asking him a question about stuff like what you were saying earlier this week about not wanting to be here. How do you feel about that now? Do you really not want to be here, or are you feeling in a bit of a better mood? And he would say, I don't know if I meant to say it like that, but, that's, That I guess that's how you took it. So yeah, I'm training hard, and it just always came back to how hard he was training and he was ready for the fight. It was a very weird situation, but I guess we can get onto some other topics that happened in this press conference as well. The stare downs are pretty weird, but let's talk about Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega. They had some exchanges in this press conference. It was a little bit back and forth, pretty cordial at the start, but then Alexander Volkanovski, of course, he does not like Brian Ortega, and I get it, man. I don't kind of like Brian Ortega as well, and it's not even stuff that he's done. It's just the way he is. He seems like a bit of an annoying cunt, if I do want to put it as lightly as I possibly can, and as politely as I possibly can. I understand why Volkanovski doesn't like him, but he came up with a great line. It wasn't even came up with a great line. He pointed out the fact at one point in this press conference, which changed the mood of Brian Ortega completely. Brian Ortega was sitting up there, smile on his face, like sort of chuckling to himself, enjoying the moment, wanting to get one back on Volkanovski in certain moments as well. He's never really been too good on the microphone, so I wasn't expecting fucking Shakespeare out of Brian Ortega. But he would like answer questions like fucking, so we walked to the park and, I saw a guy there and he told me I was going to be a world champ, and all the stuff I've been through, I've been training so hard, and now it's time, so we'll see this weekend. And then that would be it for Brian Ortega for a second. But then Alexander Volkanovski changed the entire mood of the press conference when he brought up the fact, and people forgot about this, that Brian Ortega popped for steroids. And I think if Alexander Volkanovski actually knew that beforehand, he would have been ripping into Ortega for that for a very long time, including on The Ultimate Fighter as well, because I'll tell you this, Ortega never gets shit for that. He clearly failed a drug test for his UFC debut on anabolic steroids by USADA, got caught by USADA using anabolic steroids in his UFC debut, and that got completely brushed under the rug when they were trying to promote him to fight for the title against Max Holloway. No one asked him any questions about that. When you look at Dillashaw and John Jones and some of the digs they get, especially TJ Dillashaw, because some people still claim John Jones is the GOAT of the sport and act like nothing even happened. But when you look at TJ Dillashaw, a guy who also got caught using roids, he gets shit every single press conference, the entire chat, Snake, EPO Shaw, Pillashaw. Every single thing is about the fact that Dillashaw took roids. Ortega got none of that. However, Volkanovski pointed out that he did pop and test positive for anabolic steroids, and Ortega's whole mood just went, ugh, fuck, I didn't know you knew about that, kind of. That's how it felt anyway, like he had this big smiley face, he was out there enjoying himself, and then as soon as Volkanovski mentioned that, it was like when Colby Covington called out Usman for roids. There was like this weird, oh shit, I don't really have a response to that one. This is an awkward moment here. Anyway, and then Volk really doubled down, talking about how he doesn't deserve the belt. You cheated. You're not even going to get this belt. You don't even deserve to be here. At the end of the press conference, I'll check what I put down here as well, because I wrote it down. He said, I didn't know about you popping. That shit don't sit well with me. You don't deserve to be here. I loved Volkanovski's energy throughout the entire press conference, because that is true. He was a cheat. Like, he got caught cheating by the same logic that Dillashaw got caught cheating as well. Like, It's not a good look for Ortega after this press conference, and I think a lot of people have changed their mind over who they're actually rooting for here, because Volkanovski was out there spitting facts on Brian Ortega, and it did not look good for Brian Ortega. He was annoyed by the end of it, and Volkanovski just kept saying, listen, you popped, I don't give a fuck, like, you're the one who popped here, and that don't sit well with me, and you don't deserve this fucking belt. Like, credit to Alexander Volkanovski. He made it somewhat interesting in some way towards the end, especially. They had a little bit of beef back and forth as well. So that was that segment over. There wasn't really much to talk about here, but Valentina Shevchenko, Lauren Murphy. Lauren Murphy's answering questions the way she needs to answer questions, but there was one moment with Lauren Murphy where she paused for way too long. Whenever they asked her about, well, I think it was the Schmo that asked her about, what do you think Valentina has to worry about when you're fighting her? And it was just like, she's never fought anyone like me. Like, yes, she has. She's fought Nunes. Like, she's fought you, but better than you, and other opponents that are like you and better than you. There's no specific style that Lauren Murphy brings. Like, she just goes out there and throws punches like a blind woman, like most UFC women's flyweights. Like, there's not much that she's going to bring to the table different, but I do respect that Lauren Murphy said that she's not scared. She's going to go out there and do her thing, and the pressure's all on Shevchenko. I understand all of that. There's only so much you can say at a press conference when you're that big of an underdog. Of course, Shevchenko spoke about how, I will be champ, you know, and all this weirdness and whatever that was. And then that was it, basically. That was actually the press conference. But I do want to say this, and I do want to have some comments here. Right. Volkanovski's line at the start was pretty good, because he said, I'd have to be really drunk to get along with Brian Ortega, I'll tell you that much. Which is a good line, because I think he actually doesn't like Ortega. I don't think the beef is fake or anything like that, and Ortega said he'd like to be friends with him. Volkanovski says otherwise. He does not like him at all and would not be friends with him. Nick Diaz, of course, with his weird responses was very strange, and the weird questions that were being asked. But I do want to say this, like, media... Who, like, are we at the fucking special needs convention here? Like, how are these absolute extra chromosome having retards like, they're the media? The questions they were answering, like, or asking, sorry. It's actually, they speak for so long because it's their moment. They're on camera. They're going to get their question in and have their moment where they ramble for as long as they possibly can. I'm telling you, most of the questions from the media are longer than the fucking answers that the fighters give. Like, it's actually pathetic. Like, they ramble for so long about nonsense, and then they'll end the question with, how do you feel? And that's it. Like, they'll say whatever they want to say. They'll give their own points. They'll give their own arguments. And then they'll just end it off with, how do you feel? And then the fighter goes, yeah, I feel good, you know, it's a fight, so go out there and feel good, you know. And then obviously Robbie Lawler was giving his responses of, I'm ready to fight, I'm a real fighter, and all that stuff that Lawler usually says. And I do like Lawler. After he walked away from the face-off with Nick Diaz, he looked very happy with himself, shaking his shoulders a little bit like he feels that buzz that he's about to fight again. He seems like he's in good energy and good spirits. Nick Diaz is a lot bigger than him, which makes me feel that maybe the 185 move was kind of planned, which is kind of a bitch and scummy move. But either way, I do want to say this as well. At a press conference, yeah, you, listen, media members, you get Dana White every fucking weekend. Every weekend, you get a chance to ask your questions to Dana White. This is the one chance we have where Volkanovski's on stage, Ortega's on stage, Nick Diaz, Lawler is on stage, Lauren Murphy, Valentina Shevchenko, who cares, I know, but they're also on stage. Like, why the fuck are you asking questions about random shit like Canada's market? Like, shut the fuck up and ask the fighters on stage some questions. Like, it's so annoying when these media, they're actually ruining the fucking sport, these downies in the media. Either way, ask other questions, not to Dana White, about the Canada market. Like, last time there was a question about if Alexander Shlemenko can get into the UFC. Just some random fucking guy there asking if his friend can get into the UFC. It's just a disgrace every time. They need to vet these interviewers and get real media men. Like, where's Ariel Helwani? I want Ariel Helwani coming out of nowhere with a good question. Chael Sonnen coming out on the other side with a good question as well. I feel like that's missing from the press conferences, is some well-known media members that are known in the game, like Luke Thomas comes in with a question, Daniel Cormier comes in with a question. That would be so much better, and it'd be better for them as well, because they get their content asking questions at a press conference and build their profile because they'll be in the press conference. I don't understand why this fucking random guy is asking questions about absolute nonsense, but don't ask Dana White any fucking questions at a press conference. It pisses me off because it wastes fucking time. Other than that, Diaz keeps speaking like he's going to lose, something that I noticed, and Lauren Murphy's handling her situation as best as she can because it's not going to go too well. But I did like that bit at the end where Volk said, I didn't know about you popping for roids, you don't deserve to be here. And it really rubbed Ortega the wrong way, but for a second, I'll tell you this, when I was watching it live, Dana White's in between them, and Volkanovski said, I didn't know about you popping. I thought, Dana's like, oh shit, he's on to me. You know what I mean? Because Dana's looking, you know what I mean? Dana's looking saucy recently. He is, he's on something. You know what I'm saying? Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. That's my opinion on the press conference. I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye. Click that button up there. I'll see you later. What a weird one. That's all I gotta say. Shit. Get Marvin Vettori at every press conference. Let's start a fucking hashtag or a petition to make that happen, because even though he was weird, it just makes it entertaining when something crazy is going on. You know what I mean? So, see you later. Toodle pip.